1 month down, 11 more to go. Hello and welcome to my monthly wrap-up. This is the first of the year for 2023. So in this video I'm going to be wrapping up my month of reading for January and going over some of my planned books for February. I'll talk a little bit about each one if I have things to say about them. Let's get this ball rolling. In January I had a fairly solid month. It was a bit slow going at first, but it kind of picked up after I was able to go through a couple of shorter books and kind of get my reading pace back on track. So with that being said, the first book that I finished in January was a holdover from December. That is Doom Key by Stephen King. I did really like this book. I didn't love it. Gave it a 4 out of 5 at the end. I think it's very well written. It's got some really nice passages in it. It's got a lot of ideas about creativity and art and that kind of lifestyle. The characters in the story, however, were kind of middle of the road for me. I didn't really get too involved in the plot, the main plot as it were. The characters are fine, they weren't all timers for me, so it was kind of a slog to get through at some times, at some points. But overall it was a fairly solid read. I did enjoy it. I would maybe read it again, who knows. So like I said, I gave it a 4 out of 5. And then speaking of warm weather and islands, the next book that I read was Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. So last month, maybe 2 months ago, I watched Black Sails. And that is a sort of a prequel series to Treasure Island with some of the same characters and involved in both. I really enjoyed the show, so I wanted to get into this book as soon as possible. And since it was the beginning of winter, the beginning per se, the probably the coldest stretch of winter in early January, I wanted to think about some more warmer books. So I started with Doom Key and then obviously Treasure Island. This was an okay book. I really did enjoy the beginning. With the setup there on the inn, I forget what it's called, the Admiral Benbow or something. I like that part. I enjoy the kind of the introductory kind of stuff. Kind of building up the idea of the pirate mythos, as it were. I did like the ending, I think, but the middle was kind of a slog for me. It was a bit hard to get through. I did want to read immersively for this one. I was hoping to get one checked out from the library, but that was like a 3-week hold. So I went with a narration from LibriVox, which was not my favorite. It's my first experience with LibriVox, so I'm hoping to try some more of their audiobooks at some point. But the ones I chose for Treasure Island were not my favorite. They got kind of annoying after a while, so I eventually just stopped listening to those altogether. I read the rest of the book myself, which I much preferred. But it was an okay book. I'm not sure I'd read it again or would recommend it to a whole lot of people unless you're really interested in pirates. So I ended up giving that one like a 3.5 out of 5, I think. Next up was a nonfiction book, maybe my only nonfiction book of the year. It's hard to say. This one was an older one. This was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It's one of the most revered self-help books of all time. That's very well regarded in the nonfiction community, whatever that is. And I wanted to read it for a while, and I bought it a few months ago, so I got into that. It was okay. Again, I had some good advice, had some useful things in there, but it was surrounded by a lot of less than useful advice. And there's a lot of padding. I think it was could have been condensed by quite a bit, but then wouldn't have been a full-length novel or a full-length book, so they had to get the page numbers in there somewhere. As it is, not all the advice is stuff that I would recommend doing. Some of it's a bit manipulative, but there is some good stuff in there, I think. Wouldn't mind reading that again at some point. I think I also gave this one a 3.5 out of 5. So I had a couple of average books in the middle of the month there, but I did rebound at the end with one that is much better. That was the Count of Monte Cristo. This is the other holdover from last month. One of the big classics I wanted to get to, and it definitely is big. It was a 1,200 page book. It wasn't very dense or anything though, so it wasn't that hard to read. It was just quite long, and I really enjoyed this book. Like I said, it's not very dense. It's very easy to read. It's got some very powerful themes in the story about justice and perseverance and hope and morality and things like that. I do plan on making a review video for this book, so I can talk about it at length. But I did quite like the Count of Monte Cristo. I gave it a 5 out of 5. I could be talked down to a 4.5 out of 5 if I thought about the extraneous, is that a word? Some of the extraneous subplots that were not always quite necessary. And then the ending kind of went on a bit longer than I would have liked. But then the final ending, the final chapter really made up for it. So I ended up giving that a 5 out of 5. Would like to read that again at some point. I know that's quite a task, being such a long book. And this is the one that's a little harder to do on audio because the translation that I read from Robin Buss, as far as I know, is not available on audiobook anywhere. So if I did read this on audio at some point, it'd have to be a different translation, which may not be that bad, but And then finally, the last book that I finished in January was a rather short one. This was The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. This is the book that the upcoming movie, the Knock on the Cabin or whatever, is based on. And I have some mixed feelings about this one. It's my first book by Paul Tremblay. I have been wanting to read more of his books, or any of his books, very soon. So this is my first one. I think the writing is fairly well done. The characters are, the viewpoints of the characters are very well done, very well fleshed out. The characters themselves they're okay. They're not going to be all that memorable to me, but they were serviceable for the story. There was some suspenseful moments and a lot of violence in the book, and the premise is really interesting as well. So if you don't know the premise, it's basically a family at a cabin in the woods, and they get kind of interrupted or invaded by a group of people who have some very interesting demands for them. I'm not going to say any more in case you haven't watched the trailers or anything like that. I don't want to spoil too much for you since it is a very short story. But like I said, the premise is very interesting, and for the first part of the book, it carries the story on fairly well. But then the book just goes on for far too long. There's a lot of unnecessary stuff in there. He does a lot of things where he stops the narrative and goes to a sudden flashback or something that goes for about 2 pages, and those are kind of annoying. I don't feel they added too much to the story. They just kind of added to the page count, and then the ending was kind of mixed. I did not like the ending at all. It was very abrupt. It didn't resolve the things that I would have liked it to have resolved, without saying anything more than that. But other than that, it was okay. I gave this one 3 out of 5. So I ended the month on a kind of a down note. But, you know, that's how it be sometimes. So I do have one book that I'm still in the middle of reading that I started a while ago. That is the first book in the Mistborn Era 1 series, trilogy, The Final Empire, by Brandon Sanderson, obviously. This one's kind of a slow going for me. I'm not really attached to it quite just yet, but I'm only about 100 pages in. So we'll see how that goes for me in the next 500 pages or whatnot. I did sneak in a couple of short stories by Lovecraft this month. The first one was the Rats in the Walls, which was fairly well done. It's pretty formulaic for Lovecraft, but I think it's more suspenseful than At the Mountains of Madness, which isn't quite the same story, but it's kind of a similar plot structure per se. I did like the ending fairly well, even though there was a lot of stuff in the beginning that was very boring, very dry. I'm not going to give that one a rating or anything. It's just a short story. The other one, well, actually I haven't finished it yet, is what's it called? The Shunned House, which is so far kind of the same formula as the Rats in the Walls. So we'll see how that goes. I said I haven't finished that yet, so I'm still in the middle of that. Yeah, so there we go. So that wraps up what I've read and what I'm reading. I'm going to go into next the books I plan on reading in February. This one's going to be a little bit weird because I do have a couple read-alongs I am planning to participate in. So I'm kind of building my month off of those. One is very short, the other one is quite long. I'm not quite sure how dense or easy to read it will be, so I'm not sure how many other things I'll be able to fit in this month. So the first one, which is quite short, is The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. I was supposed to read this book in junior high for a class, but I either did and forgot all about it, or I didn't, and I just said that I read it, because I don't remember anything about it other than just thinking it was very dry. Maybe that was War of the Worlds by Wells, because I did read that one and kind of disliked it around the same time. As for The Time Machine, I do plan on reading this starting on February 1st, and hopefully finishing that within a few days. I don't really know the plot a whole lot. I know there was a movie. I may have seen that as well. I don't remember it. I know it involves a time machine and time travel and Morlocks or something. The whatever things. Anyways, that's that one. The other one that I am reading for sure with the read-along is Dune, which I've been wanting to read for a while now. I'm not quite sure how easy to read this will be. I don't have a book for that yet. I need to get a copy of that before I read it. So I'm looking forward to that. I did just release a video last week with a bunch of sci-fi books I wanted to read, and Dune was on the list. And then before I even released that video, there's a kind of a big push to start either Red Rising or Dune or Sun Eater. But I ended up just going with Dune since there was a read-along for that, and it's just one book that I'm committing to at this time. I know there are more in the series, but if I do read the rest of the series, it'll be later on. So I just have other things I want to get to this year. But I for sure want to give the first one a chance. So then after that, the only ones I for sure want to get to next month are short standalones. The first one being Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. This is one of the classic dystopian novels, and one that I've been wanting to read. I did finally buy a copy of it a week or so ago, so I will be getting into that very soon. I may start that alongside the other ones or not, I don't know. I kind of got into the habit of reading more than one book over the past month, and so just reading one at a time feels kind of weird now, so I don't know if I'll be doing the multiple books at once or not. The other standalone I want to get to for sure this month is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Did also buy this one recently. It's also very short, so I'm hoping to get to that and get it read very quickly. I do know the premise of it, although it's been a while since I've seen the movie, so a lot of it's going to be fresh for me, I think. So those are the ones I want to read for sure. And then if I have time, or if I am in the mood, there's a few more I might get to. The first one is the second Mistborn book, which is The Well of Ascension, I think. It kind of depends if I have time for that, and if I want to read it this soon after finishing the first book, or if I want to read it at all. Maybe if I don't like the first book, I won't read it. So that's why it's kind of in the maybe pile, but we will see. The other one, the other two, I have two more. So the first one is The October Country by Ray Bradbury. This one I could switch with one of the other standalones if I wanted to. I could switch The Road with The October Country if I wanted to. We'll see what kind of mood I'm in. I do want to get to some more Bradbury soon. And this one is a series of short stories. So it'd be quite a different read than anything else I have going at the time. And then the final one that I might get to, depending on the time and if I'm in the mood for it, is my next big classic, that is East of Eden. This is the one I've been chirping about reading for the last 3 months. So I do want to get to it very soon, but I am kind of coming off of still kind of reeling from the Count of Monte Cristo, so I'm not sure if I want to dive into that soon, or if I want to take a few weeks before I do that. So we'll see how much time I have left in the month and what kind of mood I'm in when I get through some of the other stuff. If I do have time and stuff, then I will definitely get into that before March. So that is my list. That's all the books that I have planned for February and the books that I read in January. So that is my monthly wrap-up. That's all I have. I feel like I should have more to say, but I don't, so I'm going to go ahead and end it here. So thank you for watching, and don't forget to